And we are live. Welcome to this week's edition of the Funvee Tailgate presented by ThunderblogSports.com, a part of the Bullpen Cart podcast feed. I, of course, am the G-Man, Jordy Cannell. Joining me, as always, is my man, Matty D. What's up, buddy?
It's a big Tuesday.
Huge.
First of all, there's some action on. So if you want to get a little football fix, hop in today.
I think it's I think we're in a point in this vortex where we have at least some type of football game, whether college or NFL, for like 3 straight weeks.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
every single day of the week you can find football.
Kent State currently up 7-0 on Bowling Green. Miami of Ohio beating Buffalo 14-7, both on ESPNU, ESPN2. So if you're listening in live, but if not, check in. It's a great opportunity to watch some football. By the way, before you poo-poo those kind of schools, Ben Roethlisberger went to Miami of Ohio. Khalil Mack went to the University of Buffalo. So NFL players play in these games.
And you're forgetting probably the most popular of one of the schools you mentioned.
I'm clearly not remembering it. So
Julian Edelman went to Kent State. He played quarterback there.
That is true. I forget. You were right.
Yeah.
Which is wild, by the way, that Julian Edelman played quarterback. And if you watched him last night, he doesn't look anything like a quarterback.
No.
Yeah, but I forgot. You are correct. Yeah. He is so little. Anyway.
The Mac.
Yeah. But more importantly, nothing against the Mac. More importantly, what everybody's talking about is the first college football playoff rankings have arrived officially tonight. They were
hot off the presses.
Yes. No main surprises, I think, in, say, the top 6.
No,
maybe not in terms of the teams that are there. Maybe not. We can talk about where they ended up, but it's gonna be fun because chaos has a very big opportunity to play into this. Absolutely. So October 30th, we get our first rankings of the year. By the way, I'm going to start you off. I'm going to get your thoughts here. I'm going to start you off with a fun fact. Mm-hmm. Every year since this has begun, past 4 years, right?
This is the 5th year, yeah.
5th year. The past 4 years, the team ranked 3rd has never made it to the college football playoff.
It's very true.
And I just wanted to make sure we brought that up now.
And I'm pretty sure last year was the first year that a team – like the first 3 years, I think a team that was in the teens clawed their way into the college football playoff.
Yeah, Ohio State and Oklahoma both did it.
Was there a team 2 years ago or no?
Yeah, one was 16.
Last year there wasn't.
It was Ohio State was 16th. I think Oklahoma was 15th at some point. They both made it. I don't know if it was the same year.
It was in the first ranking.
Yeah. By the way, this is wild. 2 of the first 4 number 1 teams were Mississippi State in the first year and Ole Miss last year.
Yeah.
Which is wild to think about that those 2 teams. I mean, by the way, Mississippi State's still a pretty good program. Ole Miss isn't great anymore. But anyway, it's incredible to think about some of the teams that you saw ranked so high in previous years. You would always assume it would have always been Alabama number 1 and Clemson number 2, but it's not the case.
No, and further, a number one seeded team in the final rankings, so the number 1 seed in the actual college football playoff, never has actually won the championship. It's always been a lower seed.
Actually, I'm pretty sure a number 1 team ever ranked in the first ever one has never won.
Really?
Ole Miss hasn't won, right?
Yeah.
And
let's think. Ohio State won it. They weren't number 1.
Nope.
Then the next year was Alabama. I don't know where they were. Then Clemson. I don't think they were number 1. And then last year was Alabama, and they weren't.
Yeah, I don't think so. Like I said, I think you're right. Let me take a look. Wait. It actually shouldn't be that hard because there's so few years.
Yeah, there's so few years. But while you do that, so it's Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Notre Dame are your top 4. LSU and Alabama obviously playing this weekend, so somebody's going to fall out. Then you got Michigan at number 5 from the Big Ten, Georgia in at number 6, Oklahoma number 7, Washington State number 8. So you got your Power 5 and Notre Dame represented there. Kentucky and Ohio State round out your top 10 with Florida.
Let's stop there. Let's stop with the top 10 real quick. I want to make sure we touch on a couple things. One, LSU ahead of Notre Dame.
I like it.
Well, I do like it. I think that because of Notre Dame's former ranked opponents falling on hard times, such as Stanford. I think it makes sense that LSU has jumped up. What I will tell you, though, is, by the way, Stanford, Va Tech have really fallen apart. As they haven't had great years. I will tell you, though, it's a little bit of a punt by the committee, because the number 3 team has never made the college football playoff, and guess who the number 3 team plays this week, right?
Yeah, by Alabama.
Right. So they're basically, oh well, look, I mean, we think LSU is going to lose, so we put them 3rd, that we continue this trend. I'm half joking, but I don't know. There's something behind it. But yeah.
That's some tinfoil hat there. I'm proud of you.
Well, let me do this. Give me your biggest. Forget the actual rankings of the top 10. Who's your biggest shocker being in the top 10?
Being in the top 10?
It's pretty easy for me. I got to be honest.
I'm going to go with Ohio State.
Okay. I don't think that's a bad idea. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only reason why is because Ohio State lost to a Purdue team, not anywhere near the rankings. I'm trying to see if there are another team receiving votes this week, but they're not, because they lost to Michigan State.
I was going to say, I probably would say that Ohio State loss is probably the worst.
Exactly. That's why it surprises me, because they at least what we saw last year and this year, there aren't enough losses out there of these top teams that we can really judge them. Because think about it, Penn State's number 14, West Virginia's number 13, which really, like, Iowa State being in the top 25 just kind of helps that. But yeah, I think that bad of a loss happening. I know they're number 8 in the AP, but they don't like to use that as an idea. I would have thought maybe they'd put Florida in because they beat a top 10 team. They got close with Georgia kind of close last week with Georgia. I would have thought they'd be there. I'm going to guess Kentucky is yours, but Kentucky is undefeated in regulation.
I can't hate on the Wildcats because they beat Florida, which was huge. Exactly. They lost to Texas A&M, who's ranked. Now, obviously, look, they're going to play Georgia. If they win against Georgia this coming week, A, Georgia's out, and B, they're in the driver's seat to have the opportunity to at least play in the SEC championship game. I think if they lose that game, it's probably over for them. My surprise, though, I got to be honest, and I know they're a one-loss team, but it's Washington State. Yeah,
that was the other one I was debating.
Yeah. Here's why. They lost to USC, who's definitely not at USC, but they're not at the normal USC we see. More so, though, they haven't played anybody. I mean, they played Wyoming, San Jose State, Eastern Washington, and now with Oregon losing, with Stanford losing. Interesting. So
there's one other team in the CFP top 25 that's in the Pac-12. And the AP top 25 for that matter. But
which, by the way, we're going to get to them because they're actually a really good team.
They're a really good team, but they're a 2-loss team, so you have to.
Right, that's the problem. But I just think Washington's overall resume. I only reason I think they're ranked 8th is because they're a Pac-12 team. Yeah. If they played in any other conference, even with one loss, I think they'd be out of the top 10.
Yep.
Yes, they have a road to the playoff, but they're going to need help because the teams in front of them and the teams behind them are going to pick up potential really high-quality wins. So Kentucky, Ohio State, Florida, West Virginia, they can all jump. To me, they can jump Washington State, even if Washington State wins out.
Yeah, they all have teams ahead of them on their schedule still remaining. Obviously, Kentucky's playing Georgia this weekend. Michigan and Ohio State will play at the end of the year. Florida, I think, still has – they have a couple people, but – West Virginia still has Oklahoma. They also have Texas, even though they just lost.
I'm going to tell you, though, West Virginia, we're going to get – they have the opportunity. They're going to have to play well. But they have the opportunity to rise.
No, they absolutely do.
Yeah, because, by the way, their loss is to Iowa State, who's in the top 25. Right.
Yeah. What do you take, just quickly, what do you take on the merit that there are 3 teams that have 3 losses in the first top 25?
Well, I think the first thing is I like the fact that these are teams that have they have quality wins, and B their losses are to a lot of their losses are to teams who were ranked. Right. Look at Mississippi State. They lost to Kentucky, Florida, and LSU. I mean,
top 10 teams,
right? And by the way, It wasn't
or top 11.
Kentucky smoked them, and LSU smoked them, but Florida was close. But still, and they beat Texas A&M, and they beat. I know it's a weekend Auburn, but they beat Auburn. I appreciate the committee saying, you know what, if you play a tough schedule, yeah, you're probably not in place for the playoffs, but we respect the fact that you've done so. You think about Texas A&M. They lost to Clemson in a tight matchup. They actually probably were the closest against Alabama, 45-23. And they lost a tough game to Mississippi State at Mississippi State last week. There's another program that I think deserves it. So I appreciate the committee doing that. And I like, by the way, because I talk about them so much, I like the fact that my Iowa State Cyclones rose up a little bit.
Yeah, these are basically the Matty D's, the Midwest Matty D's.
I'm a big fan of theirs, and they've got a chance to rise up. Once again, none of those 3-loss teams to me have any opportunity at the playoff. But I respect the committee.
Once you're 2 losses, last year proved 2 losses, you're out.
Right. Yeah. Definitely there. And by the way, I did a little looking. So they basically, those 3-loss teams, in particular, Iowa State, took the place of a Houston or a Utah State, which is not in the rankings here. So Houston 17th, Utah State's 18th in the AP. But they're not even ranked in college football. So that is one of the teams, along with NC State, that took them out of the rankings here in this case.
So let me ask you about this, because UCF is 12th. They fall out of the top 10 from the AP. Houston's not even in the thing. UCF, certainly, there need to be a number of things to happen for them to have a case. But if they go undefeated, especially if they beat Houston in the final, in their final, they play Temple this week. They have all these different opponents that are starting to be the meat, and it's understandable why they're not in the top 10. Their schedule right now, like you said with Washington State, is who they beat.
Right.
But I mean, is there a point, because we talk about this with the ACC, that they have this weird schedule, and on the selection show on ESPN, they're talking about all those different ACC teams in the bottom. I mean, going with Syracuse, the bottom 7. Shout out to Q's outright got me some money this weekend. Not a big deal. But is there going to be a point where we start to take the AAC to what we used to have with the Big East, where they were kind of this conference that might spew out a top 10 or maybe 2 top 15 teams, and actually think of them as a legitimate kind of contender? Or do we need to see a playoff expansion for that to actually be a thought?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I understand the committee wants to look at just every season in a bubble, but there is some equity that I think UCF has built up. Here's my problem, and it's nothing that they can control, but their elite opponents that they quote unquote beat. We're talking about a FAU team, a Lane Kiffin team who has struggled this year. Yep. Memphis, who they barely beat, but is not having a great season, an elite season, and then Cincinnati and USF, who were undefeated just recently, who have now dropped way down. I think the problem for them is because they don't have a big time Power 5. They don't have a Boise State opponent. Remember Boise State? Every year Boise State would beat an elite team to start the year. They're arguably best non-comp. What's the word I'm looking for? Power 5 conference win is at Pitt. They beat Pitt, and they're supposed to play UNC, and that game got canceled because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
But they don't have a high quality win. If they had gone and beaten a Texas or a Penn State or a Florida, well, we'd be having a wholly different conversation because, hey, we know they can play.
Sure.
I'm not upset with their ranking, and the only way they're going to find their way in is if they're going to need like a Notre Dame to lose, and a little bit more cannibalism between 5 and 11 between them, which I think is a tough thing to see at the moment. I don't see a road in for them.
I'd argue between 14 and 3.
Right,
because Penn State beats Michigan this weekend, then Michigan beats Ohio State. I don't know how the tiebreaker works there, but there's there's enough cannibalism that 2 losses actually you have to put someone in, and Penn State somewhat finds their way in.
No, I'm with you. I definitely agree there. I think that's the problem I see and I don't see. I just think the problem is there's so many 1-loss teams with strong resumes in front of them, and high pedigree teams like Ohio State, like Oklahoma, Georgia, Michigan. LSU obviously, but I don't know how the committee can put if LSU loses to Alabama, but then as a 2-loss SEC team with all their quality wins. I don't know how you
put them over UCF. Yeah,
I don't know how you put UCF over them. I couldn't at a good conscience for what their schedule's been like, and it's so disrespect. By the way, 2 or 3 years from now, if UCF keeps doing this, they're going to have the equity and they're going to find their way in. But the committee clearly favors strong strength of schedule over anything else.
Yeah,
and that's why UCF is 12th behind a 2-loss Florida team.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. Let's talk Notre Dame for a second, though, because they're number 4, and we talked LSU, but on the Notre Dame side of it, I asked you this question last week, and we talked about it a little bit of do they need to go undefeated? And I think this is showing some of that buying into the ranking that I like to try to talk about and sometimes sound like I know what I'm talking about in the blogs that I write. Or that the blogs I've written in the past, but I think this shows it that they not only does LSU have more quality wins, but Notre Dame, they're on the fringe of this. If they lose and then a Big Ten team like Michigan, Ohio State comes in there, even with 1 loss compared to Notre Dame and a head-to-head loss, I don't know if you could really make the case for a 1-loss Notre Dame team, especially if they're 11-1, over a 12-1 Michigan, Ohio State, especially Ohio State, because then they have common wins. A 1-loss Georgia, if that ends up working out the way that it would have to. 1-loss Oklahoma, if they get the revenge against Texas. A great win against West Virginia. I mean, I think it's tough to think the Irish are going to get much past 4 until a Clemson falls out, LSU falls out, Michigan goes in and falls out, so on and so forth. The cycle keeps repeating itself. I think they stay stagnant at number 4.
Well,
even if LSU loses this weekend.
Yeah, well, let's say LSU loses. Let's say LSU loses, and let's say Michigan and Georgia win. I actually wouldn't be shocked if Georgia replaces LSU at 3.
I agree with that
because Georgia's going to beat Kentucky.
Yep,
it's a great win for them.
Top 10 win.
Yep, and I don't. The one thing, and I get this, you can't put Michigan ahead of Notre Dame because Notre Dame beat them. I know it was early in the season, and that might change as we get later. When they have the, I know Penn State's a high quality win. In my moral compass says you can't do that. Now, Michigan beats Penn State and then goes to OSU and beats them. Okay, well now we're talking. Now I might put them ahead just because. And once again, the problem with Notre Dame, you mentioned it. If they lose now, who do they lose to? Northwestern, by the way, they're a good program. It's going to be a tough game for them. I think Notre Dame, and I know Syracuse is ranked. But other than that, I mean, Florida State's lost everything. USC does not look like a particularly strong win. And we talked about it because of Stanford and Vatek's drop. They lose to a team here, they're going to be in trouble. I don't think they get in with 1 loss. And I think that's the right thing because they don't have the same strength of schedule on week in, week out.
Yeah.
And by the way, they don't have a championship game.
That's true. They don't get an extra game.
Right. I mean, all these teams are going to have to go beat another really good team. I'm with you. I thought some other snubs here to me. First of all, Appalachian State. I know they were finally ranked.
For a hot second.
I know it's tough for them. I thought Washington and Oregon didn't get a ton of love. I struggled there a little bit. I know they've had their issues recently, but they are, to me, they're pretty good football teams. That I was a little struggled with as well. I thought one of them would find their way in like the high 20s, and they didn't. But once again, I mean, they lost, so it is what it is.
Yeah, technically Washington, they're technically 26th in the AP. They have the most points in the AP poll, the non-ranked teams. And Oregon really fell off. But yeah, LSU jumps up. Georgia Southern, the team that beat Appalachian State, they are up there as well. Michigan State clawing their way back up. Cincinnati, who we were talking about a little bit earlier, is there. Iowa State in the AP, we're now quoting off of. Buffalo getting a vote, Matt. They got 1 point.
I like that. Yeah.
Wisconsin falling out.
Mm-hmm.
What do we make of that, by the way, of how the Big Ten West is building itself right now? Is that going to hurt the Big Ten in the long run?
Hurt them. Well, No, I don't. I think the big. Here's the hard part for me. I'm struggling with words here because I'm trying to figure out the best way to like kind of describe it, if you will, how I feel about the two conferences. The West has some really high quality teams, but they don't have the same brand recognition as the East, right? Like Iowa's a really good football program year in and year out. We already know about Wisconsin, even though their struggles this year. Northwestern is consistently doing what they're doing this year, beating some really good teams from time to time. So the top three over there, I don't know if they're as great as the top four in the East, but they're not that far off. And you would expect one of the other four, whether it's Purdue or Nebraska in particular, I know they've had a rough start, but I think Scott Frost turns it around there, is going to climb back up, and they're going to have some teams to at least compete with the East a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope, right? Kind of looking at this year, Northwestern right now has a large lead, technically a game and a half on Wisconsin, Iowa, who they play next week, play Notre Dame. So if they lose, they'd go 0-3 in non-conference play, including a loss to Duke, who plays Miami, and that kind of starts to really go down the primrose path of who needs to be good for whom. But I mean, you can really figure out the Dark Knight Joker. You need me to. One cannot. I'm now tripping myself up. I'm tinfoil hatting myself. But yeah, Northwestern. I think if they make a run, especially if they play Notre Dame close enough, you can start to try to figure out some sort of likeness between wins and losses and all that good stuff. I think if Iowa beats them handily at home, Northwestern next week, I think then you really have a case of trying to figure out how the Big Ten West, really for the ultimate Big Ten champion of whether it is Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State figures it out, which maybe they don't get it because they lost to Michigan State. That's tough. I guess has Michigan State played Ohio State yet? I'm trying to think how the tiebreaker would work.
I don't think they have.
Yeah. So they would have to beat Ohio State. Michigan would have to lose to both Penn State and Ohio State to all have 2 losses, and they'd all have to be 7-2. Am I thinking of that right? Yeah, that's nuts. Maryland's in there at 3-2. Shout out to the Terps who reinstated DJ Durkin today. But man, yeah, the Big Ten a lot more intriguing than even when I asked you this question 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, no, I know. I think that's the one thing too is I kind of wish these rankings were unleashed next week because when you look across the board to all these programs, a bunch of them are playing each other this week. It's like the herd is going to thin tremendously.
That's what always seems to end up happening, though, with the first ranking. Like the first one you were talking about, where Mississippi State was number 1, and they were playing Auburn, who was like number 3 or something.
Right. Yep.
Like that just ended up happening. That there was another 1-3, or there's a 3-4, or a 5-2. Like there's some type of top 10 matchup, if not multiple, in the first week, if not the second week. So, I mean, maybe that's part of it. They want to try to manually drive up ratings themselves. I mean, that's a little more conspiracy theory than we needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But
who knows? We didn't do it. I just wanted to make sure. So we stopped at 10. Florida's 11th. UCF's 12th. West Virginia's 13th. Penn State's 14th. Utah is 15th. Iowa 16th. Texas 17th. Mississippi State 18, Syracuse 19, and 20th is Texas A&M. We touched on Florida, UCF, West Virginia, Penn State. We haven't really mentioned to me Utah is, and they deserve it, is way up in that ranking. The only other Pac-12 team other than Washington State. They lost to Washington and Washington State in back-to-back weeks. Other than that, they've pretty much beaten everybody. And they're gonna have some opportunities to keep pushing here. They're atop the Pac-12 South. I don't know if they have a road in just because of the 2 losses, and I know they're to 2 decent. I mean, one program's ranked and one it should be ranked again. I think by the end of the year, but they're an interesting team to have in there. Basically, them and Iowa to me are fascinating, and I think they were ranked higher than I expected for both.
Yeah. It's one of those things that eventually the 2 lost teams are going to have to start creeping in on the top 10. Yeah. And I think those are certainly, especially if they stay as 2 lost teams, they're certainly candidates to be fringes for, depending on who ends up making the various championship games, Rose Bowl or the back end. I forget which games are also the college football playoff games. So excuse me if the Rose Bowl is one of them. I don't think it is, but Rose Bowl, a backup Rose Bowl team or a backup of like those wild card games that are thrown out there of the New Year's Six. So keeping them up there, I mean, they're certainly good. Penn State and Utah are both. Penn State's 7th and Utah's 11th in the FPI. Iowa's 14th. Mississippi State's 15th. So I mean, these are quality teams. They can put up points. They have, for the most part, solid enough defenses. I think we've seen cracks in all of their defenses at times, but solid enough. Yeah. The one that's going to be intriguing to see where they go is Texas, because they play a West Virginia team this week, and I don't know if they pull this off. It's in Austin, so they would effectively knock out West Virginia, leave all of the Big 12's hope on Oklahoma's shoulders. But Texas, if they figure this out, they could find their way in the Big 12 championship game. The playoff, you'd really need a lot of chaos to happen because they have 2 losses and you find yourself in an Ohio State situation. But
wait. But they're going to have they have 3 quality. They play West Virginia, and they go at Texas Tech, who is quality, not right, and they play Iowa State. They win those 3 games,
and then presumably Oklahoma again.
And they beat Oklahoma. They're going to be a top 10 program with the opportunity, if somebody else slips up, to jump in there.
They have a better resume. They would have a better resume given the same scenario that USC had last year than USC would have had this year.
Yeah. Yep.
Whatever makes sense.
And I think that's important just to think, just to note in this case. But by the way, props for the committee to take a look at Syracuse's record after that near miss. That's really solid to have them at 19th. Let's go to 20 through 21, 21 through 25. NC State, Boston College, Fresno State, Iowa State, Virginia, which Virginia is fascinating. We had talked
what a team
terrible they were going to be.
Yeah, Matt, I think we each said a sentence about that.
I know
in our ACC preview,
and here they are. They lose to they. By the way, they lost to Notre Dame. Not Notre Dame, Indiana, week 2. You're like, yep, that's what Virginia we thought.
Yeah, that's what we expected.
Their only other losses to NC State. They squeaked one out against Miami, and then they went and they beat Duke and UNC, and now all of a sudden they're rolling. And by the way, they play Pitt, Liberty, Georgia Tech, Vatech. Vatech's going to be a big game. They could find themselves playing Clemson in the ACC championship game. I mean, honestly, it's a very easy path for them to get there. But Vatech's going to be a rivalry game. That being said, though, of the last 5 teams, the one who can make, to me, the biggest splash in college football of those 5 teams is Boston College, because they play Clemson comes to visit them.
Yep.
And I think they, with that opportunity in front of them, 100% have the chance to go ahead and upset Clemson. It's going to be a huge game. It's in 2 weekends, so not this weekend, next weekend. Even if they lose to Virginia Tech this weekend, they, to me, are the team. With A.J. Dillon, they could figure out a way at home to take down Clemson and shake the entire tree. Because a Clemson loss to Boston College opens a lot of doors for a lot of teams.
And that's a really good point, because Boston College, when they didn't have A.J. Dillon, they looked like a completely different team. This guy carries them, literally. He went for almost 150 yards last weekend. And had a touchdown. I mean, these guys, they can put up points. I mean, they only won 27-14. That's more of an NFL score last week. But you're right.
Miami's issues aren't defense; they're offensive. So
exactly.
27 points is pretty good against that Miami defense, right?
Yeah, their defense is pretty goddamn solid. The only teams they've let up more than 4 touchdowns against are 4 touchdowns or more, I should say, are NC State, Temple, who's a solid team, can do damage.
Yep. And
Wake Forest.
Yeah.
They only allowed 21 to UMass, 14 to Holy Cross, which they allowed 30 to Purdue. on that, we were all climbing on the Boston College train right away, and then they lost on the road. So they're an road team, but they're a good home team. They're very solid.
I agree. Yeah. We've touched on it a couple of times, so let's run through quickly here the matchups.
Yes.
In Week 10, I'm going to start you off with a game on Thursday that if you want to see, you should tune in.
Better than the NFL game.
Yes. Temple goes to visit UCF. Temple has been one of the best defenses in college football. UCF gets a test here against a team that just came off a couple really good victories. This should be a tight game. By the way, there's actually a line for this game of 10.5 for UCF, which actually should show you how close this game could be because that's a pretty low line for a team that's been smoking people. But Temple's beaten after a rough start to the season. They beat Maryland, which I think is I think it's an okay win.
Yep.
They're a big team. They beat Navy. They beat Cincy. This is not a terrible Owls team. So
no.
Pay attention there. This is a big game on Thursday, and we talk about Thursday nights get a little wild. We don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. Exactly. And then Friday you got Pitt, Virginia.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that to be a big time
ACC. Game.
Yep. But really, you got to strap in Saturday if you're able to watch, which we aren't. But if you're able to watch,
wire to wire of good football.
Oh my God! Well, the big games kick off. There's some ranked games early, but the big games kick off at 3:30. Georgia, Kentucky, West Virginia, Texas, which we've already touched on. And then shortly after it at 3:45 is Penn State, Michigan. Those games are going to do a lot of deciding early to shake the tree here. I got to tell you, I'm just going to give you up front. I like Georgia. I want Kentucky, but I like Georgia. I want West Virginia, but I like Texas. I'd take Texas, and I'm taking Michigan to beat Penn State at home. None of those are. I don't think it's an upset to me. I know West Virginia is ranked higher than Texas, but that's what I look at. Those three games, you're going to be flipping.
Texas is a 1.5 point favorite.
Right? Yeah, at home. I'm just saying.
I think the only game that's a lock is Michigan, Penn State.
Yeah, that's a lock. Here's the only reason I can't say it's a lock. I have to give credit to, and I know how great Michigan's defense is. Trace McSorley is the kind of quarterback because he's an ad-libber that could do a couple little
he'll
things.
Trip him up a little bit, but
right. I'm with you though. I think Michigan, their defense.
It's the highest percentage. Let's put it that way.
I would agree with that. I think all three games though have the opportunity to be classics. You got to tune in. All three.
What do you think though with Texas? So we saw them do this against Oklahoma. Do you think that we can see them do this again of being able to match a high-flying, high-powered offense? Because that's sort of what they did, and it's not in their DNA. They're more this more traditional type of team, a good, solid enough defense and an offense that just outpaces you. They set the pace, and they kind of played Oklahoma's game and got away with it, really kind of punching Oklahoma in the mouth right away. Do you think they can do that at home solidly enough to keep Will Grier down?
We talked about it when we were doing our previews to start the year. I was really high on West Virginia. I thought Grier was I thought Grier was going to win the Heisman. I thought they were going to surprise some people. I for some reason I just got a bad taste. I think to me it started with their squeak out victory against Texas Tech, and ever since then, they weren't particularly dominant against Kansas. They lost to Iowa State. They did beat up Baylor last week, but Baylor's Baylor. I've got a bad feeling for some reason. I want them to win this game, but I've got a bad feeling. I think Texas gets it done against West Virginia. I do think it might be shootout, but I just, for some reason, I've got a bad taste with West Virginia at the moment. I hope I'm wrong. I like Texas. I think Sam Ehlinger can do enough. Little Jordan Humphrey, my best name in football, God, has a shot too. They lost at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's a good team, good program. I think they bounce back and win this week. But I'm with you though. I just want to have a bad taste with West Virginia. I don't know why. I don't want to, but I do.
Okay.
By the way, now do you see a path? So how much of a believer are you in Kentucky then? It's at Lexington to beat Georgia.
Lexington, and that was what I was going to say is probably the most intriguing matchup of all of if you're going to go into personnel. Is that Georgia defense on the road against Benny Snell?
That's true. I mean, you would expectation it's going to be a pound game. I kind of thought that Georgia really hadn't played anybody until they got whopped by LSU. I think it woke them up a little bit.
Okay.
Because, I mean, they played – their only big opponent before that was South Carolina, who people thought were going to be a bounce-back team, but really weren't. I think they woke up against that loss to LSU. They came out last week against Florida. To me, Georgia's problem when I watch them is they don't allow Jake Fromm to be Jake Fromm.
Okay.
They get so hyper-conservative. When I watched him last year when they were doing their thing, I believe he was a freshman, if I'm correct. He looks like a pro quarterback. He looks like a guy who's going to be a #1 overall draft pick. He looks like all the skills. He is clearly their guy now, but they need to let him play the game. I know they have some good running backs, great running backs maybe, but they need to let him throw. If you just put 2 tight ends on either side of the formation and a fullback and run it every time, Kentucky's a good enough defense to slow him down. So I think Fromm, if they let him throw, this might be a blowout. That's where I go with it.
I'm in sort of that same boat. Is that Jake Fromm, if he's able to start picking apart that Kentucky defense, that's going to snowball it a lot. And it could, I mean, that could be it could turn from a ground and pound game to a high scoring SEC game, which you don't see a ton with teams that aren't Alabama.
Yeah. And honestly, to me, Terry Wilson, he got benched last week. They won 15-14 against Missouri on literally the last play of the game. They scored a touchdown to win. That concerns me. So they don't have a high-powered offense if they get down early. But that's why, to me, if I'm Kirby Smart, let your quarterback. He needs this because he's going to have to do this potentially in a title game coming up here against Alabama. You got to trust him to make plays and throw the football a little bit. I think they'll dominate if they do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
2 more games to keep an eye out on. We'll start with the lesser. It's probably number 4 Notre Dame at Northwestern. We mentioned it before. Ryan Field, a tougher place to play.
Huge trap game. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And Notre Dame is brutal, like a West Virginia. I mean, sorry, no, everyone was wrong there. Northwestern is like a brutal. It's like a cage match with them.
Yeah.
They're so fundamentally sound. They're physical on defense. Yeah, that's something you got to watch for. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just keep an eye out on that while you are watching, and you get 45 minutes of it before this game starts. But while you are watching at 8 p.m. on CBS, number 1 Alabama at number 3 LSU. Go Tiger, go! Bad coach show there.
It's the biggest game of the year so far.
Oh yeah,
and it may not be topped. It may not be topped. Maybe Michigan, Ohio State, but it may not be topped until championship games.
Yep.
Because it's everything.
I think it might even be better than championship games if Georgia trips.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: winner of this game, if Alabama wins, they are locked in to the championship game because they only have 2 more. Opponents left. SEC opponents left. LSU wouldn't be a lock, but they'd be close. The winner of this game is in the driver's seat. The loser isn't out of it, depending on the outcome, but the winner is a near mortal lock to at least make the championship game. And I would expect if it's either of these 2 teams, I think they win. They end up going to the college football playoff. I know it's early.
I would agree with that.
But Alabama plays Mississippi State, not a bad opponent. Mississippi State, and they play Auburn to end the year. And LSU would play Arkansas and Texas A&M. I think they're good enough teams, they'll beat both those opponents.
Yep, I would agree.
Also, it's fascinating to me because this is the first time we're going to see Alabama really play a high level. Like they've got wins, don't get me wrong, but this is the first time we're going to see them play a truly high-level opponent because they beat Texas A&M, who's ranked. Other than that, though, they haven't played any of the powerhouses. Yep. This is their first true test in Death Valley, and it's going to be fascinating because they haven't been slowed down yet. Yeah. Give me your impression. What are you thinking on this one? First of all, let me ask you this question. First question, is Tua throwing a 4th quarter pass?
I think he's throwing a 4th quarter pass.
Okay, because he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't even taken a snap.
I think it's going to be, I think it could be close. I think Alabama's probably going to win this game, but I think LSU can keep it within like a touchdown for long enough.
It's a 15.
You see them hold themselves close enough in games.
It's
their
a
defensive
line. Yeah. It's a 15-point line, and I think I would take LSU to cover that. It's in Death Valley.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Now, I got to tell you, I think the biggest difference here, though, and I think it's a shame, is their All-American potential linebacker, Devin White, out for the first half. We talked about this last week after getting a targeting call in the fourth quarter of their win last week. That is huge to me because Alabama's going to roll out 4 running backs with pro prospect opportunities, as well as a smorgasbord of wide receivers who you don't even know yet, who are all going to be playing on Sundays as well. He is like the heart and soul, White is, of that defense. His loss for the first half, I think, is a huge, huge issue. LSU is going to need the crowd to keep them in this game in the first half until he gets back. But I think it's a slugfest. Although Tua hasn't shown the ability to be stopped yet. Part of me wants Alabama. Part of me wants LSU. I'm really torn here. I guess I don't really care who wins in this case. I think it's going to be real tight, dude. I think it's really tight.
I think so, too. I think it's going to be a really good game. It's something you cannot miss.
Yeah. These guys have such classic matchups. These two programs. It's big boy football, and you just know this place is going to be absolutely crazy.
It's going to be rocking.
But yeah, it's a big time Saturday.
Should we try to pick celebrities that we're going to see on the sideline during the game?
Might see some golfers.
Yeah, like Justin Thomas, Smiley Kaufman.
Thomas is an LSU guy. Smiley Thomas is an LSU guy.
He's an Alabama guy.
Oh, is Thomas? Who's Alabama?
He's Alabama. Justin Thomas.
Oh, okay. It's Kaufman at
Alabama.
Kaufman's LSU.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought they were both Bama.
Maybe you're right. I don't know.
Will Aaron Nola be at the game?
I hope he is.
I hope so.
Time. Show off our fills for Machado and Harper. That's a different podcast, but anyway.
Different podcast.
No,
and Simmons won't because he'll be. I don't know if they have a. Oh no, they do. They have a day game that day. The Sixers do, but
darn.
Maybe he flies down. Takes a quick jet down.
There you go. Maybe he will. He meets up with Kendall.
No. Get them away. Get her away. Summer fling. Don't need it with the Sixers. Don't need that kind of stuff.
Look, it's gonna be huge. That's the best way I can put it, though. I'm so excited about it. It's the best weekend in college football so far, and probably I'd argue maybe ever. This year at least. I just cannot be more excited about it.
Yeah, ever's a bit of a stretch. We need to do a little more research on that before.
I'll say this year.
Throw out your wild takes, Matt. I'm down with ever.
Yeah, just like pumped up in this case.
Yeah.
And it's just going to roll right into just a huge Sunday. In the NFL. I know you wanted to talk about it. Let me get your early thoughts on trades that went down today.
Yeah, so I've seen a number of trades come across the board. The Eagles obviously getting Golden Tate from the Lions is it conditional or is it definitely a third-round pick?
I believe it's definitely a third-round pick as far as I can tell, at least at this point. Mm-hmm.
I mean, they needed to get some type of weapon to add on to everything else that's been going on with the injury bugs flying everywhere. I like the trade. The third-round pick, I mean, throw them around, whatever. I think at this point it could turn into something. It could not.
Yeah.
I think it's a little early to tell of where the Eagles are going to end up drafting and all that sort of stuff. The one, though, man, I want to talk about is the Packers and what they did today.
Somewhat of a sell.
They send both. Yeah, it's weird because they're like a half a game behind the Bears.
Well, what I would say, first and foremost, the one thing I would want to bring up, I thought that Ty Montgomery, forget what even happened with him on the weekend. Over the weekend, he seemed like one of the odd men out there. I think they really like Aaron Jones, and Williams has been playing a lot on third down as well. So I didn't necessarily think that was a weird jettison. But Clinton Dix is what Pro Football Focus has him as their number 2 safety, rated out. I know he's on the last year of his deal, but I was blown away by that deal.
Yeah, that's the one that really gets me.
Shocked me. Yeah. Oh, and for a fourth. Man, he would have fit and looked good in an Eagles jersey. But anyway, yeah, that one really blew me away though there.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because 2 trades, you almost want to think the Ty Montgomery trades and Aaron Rodgers, like, get out of here. He said, hold on to the fucking ball, that kind of stuff. What do you think they're thinking? Are they that worried about the end of the year? Are they that worried about Aaron Rodgers' knee that they're just like, you know what?
I mean, first of all, the Packers are traditionally a team that wants to draft, not sign free agents. Secondly, they're not ones that they don't normally but they're weird. They also don't normally re-sign a lot of guys.
Mm-hmm.
They're a strange organization. We've talked about this. Aaron Rodgers covers for a lot of Packer organizational mistakes and inconsistencies. When you think about that team, their offensive line is actually better than most people realize, but no one knows anything about offensive linemen. Devontae Adams, and he's a stud. Other than that on offense, I mean, Jimmy Graham is not who he once was. Randall Cobb is not who he once was. A bunch of no-name guys. If you look defensively, you got Clay Matthews. Other than that, who else do they have that makes you go, whoa? Now, Aaron Rodgers' star burns so bright that he covers a lot of other players, good play. But they're just, I mean, you look top to bottom, you take Aaron Rodgers out of that organization, are they any better than, say, like the Colts? I don't think so. You replace Aaron Rodgers with, say, Andy Dalton. I think they're a bad team. So they make a lot of weird moves to me, and I just think the move. I just think those moves get covered by Aaron Rodgers and his abilities. That's the way I look at it a lot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we saw it a little bit with when Aaron Rodgers was out against the Bears.
Yeah. By the way, not only that, but he also, and this is the hard part with quarterbacks, he's got like over 20% of their salary cap.
Yeah.
So that to me, so when you have this is what happens to all these teams with great quarterbacks, they suck up all he's got $33 million coming on the cap hit. That's double Tom Brady, by the way. Maybe they see the writing on the wall with the Bears and the Vikings, along with the Saints, the Panthers, the Rams. Maybe they say, look, we're not sure we're a lock, even with Aaron Rodgers, to make the playoffs because of the quality of teams around us. So yeah, it was a weird one to me, but I really liked the Eagles' move.
Yeah, no, I like their move a lot. Let's talk about the Rams.
Yeah,
Dexter Fowler for a 5th rounder.
It was Dante Fowler. Dante Fowler, excuse me. It is a lot for a guy that hasn't really shown anything to me. I know he's gotten hurt, had some off the field issues, as well as some guys kind of appeared on theirs. By the way, they got a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick for him.
Is that what they got?
They got a 3rd and a 5th. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Holy shit. Okay, that makes a little more sense.
A 3rd round this year, a 5th round pick in 2020.
Wow, I was way off.
That's right. This is a need though for the Rams. It's a little bit of a luxury. It's a need. This though to me shows, look, they're going all in because they've traded everything for their current roster. I mean, they're going to be nearly non-existent in the draft next year. They're all in, and they basically traded for the potential. He was the 3rd overall pick in the draft in 2015. Mm-hmm. And he's shown a little bit of being a pass rush specialist. So you put him with Donald, Sue, and Michael Brockers, and all of a sudden, we've got a pretty good unit here. I don't think this is a punt at all for the Jaguars, though, because they are so deep on the defensive line. They're so deep that I don't think they drafted Taven Bryan in the 1st round this year. So they're fine, I think. By the way, he could stand up a little bit in this offense, Fowler. Be a little outside linebackery.
Interesting. I like that.
Well, Wade Phillips runs a little bit of it. He runs a little bit of the traditional 4-3. He likes to mix in the 3-4. He likes to move them around because they can line up, Donald at defensive end and a 3-4 Brocker. So they might go to more of a 3-4 look with Donald, Sue, Brockers, and then Fowler standing up. Gives them a little flexibility. So just be wary there of the different ways they can use them, because right now the guys behind them simply weren't going to compete. They're all in though. And I think, by the way, their defense, Rams defense, has faltered slightly the last few weeks. So I think that's why they made a move of this magnitude. But that's a lot to give up. You're really punting the future here a little bit if you're the Rams. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. They're paying for potential.
No, I'd agree with that. And it's definitely a let's go in now while we have it. Kind of on that same point. You're getting into you're in year 3 and getting year 4 of Jared Goff. Try to get one while you can. And
right, exactly. Yeah, I like the idea of that. I like the idea behind it. And by the way, you need pass rushers. They know that. Yeah.
Exactly. So what happened with the Eagles when they had hockey lines last year? Comes in handy.
Right. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
When's the official trade deadline? Tomorrow?
No, it's over. It was today.
It's over. It was today. That's what I thought. I saw that there might. I don't know. I read something stupid.
I was waiting for something to come through late, but I hadn't seen anything.
I haven't seen anything either. Yeah. But this week, probably week 9, we got interesting setup in terms of what we got on the board. Kind of all building towards Sunday Night Football, I think. You have a couple interesting matchups in the afternoon, but
well, first of all, Falcons Redskins.
That's actually a good point. That is a pretty good game. Redskins are really, really doing well so far this year.
Well, everyone kind of thinks that the Redskins are. You hear pundits, they don't really believe in the Redskins.
Exactly.
Kind of all start a house of cards. The Falcons game is going to have the opportunity to show how really good they are. The Redskins are in this case. But by the way, Redskins have beaten the Panthers and the Packers and the Cowboys all at home. So we'll see what happens here. I just think they're going to be tested by that. It's nice they're getting Clinton Dixon because the Falcons offense is coming. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up.
Falcons off a bye too.
Yeah, that's another tough part there. Heck, some guys get a little healthier for them there, and they bring that offense in. Other big 1:00 game is always a good matchup. Steelers-Ravens.
Yep.
Still no Le'Veon, but and Big Ben, by the way, broke his index finger. His non-throwing.
Always hurt though.
But I think he's going to be fine. Well, this game is huge because both teams really need this.
Yeah, they need it for the standings.
Yeah, this is a huge game, and Steelers coming in riding a little bit of a high. And the Ravens have disappointed to an extent. But this is a huge game. The winner of this game is at least competing now more so for the division. I don't think it locks anything in, but it's a huge matchup for both these teams. But the Bengals are 5-3 as well, so they're still rocking and rolling, although they're going to have to play the Steelers again to end the year. And so we'll see what happens. But anyway, that's another big 1:00 game. But the games really begin. The 4:00 games when we start to see some absolute collision course matchups. And the big one is in LA at 4:25.
Well, it's in New Orleans.
I'm sorry. Did I say? I'm sorry. You know what? I looked at New Orleans and I saw LA because Louisiana, and I just said LA. Go on.
You're all good. You're all good. Yeah, it is the Rams though, traveling to the Saints, and it's gonna be a really good matchup. The Saints have been pretty good at home. They've not played a ton at the Superdome, but they've been very good. Their offense, when they put up points, they go off. Coming back quickly, circling back to the Redskins, they showed while we were watching the Giants-Redskins game after our Birds won, how good the Redskins defense does against good quarterbacks, Alvin Kamara being one. I am really intrigued to see how he does against this Rams defense because now they added some other guys up front. It'll be really interesting to see how LA comes into a noisy environment and if they can match what New Orleans is kind of thrown at them. Because I think you could obviously see the shootout, but if Alvin Kamara gets going and you start to ground and pound with him and then get him kind of flying out swing passes and blah, 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 I think the Rams could get tripped up here.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, 100%.
Now, let me ask you this. Or actually, give me your thoughts on it. I'll ask you my question because it's more of a fun fact type of deal.
Jordy?
Yeah.
Oh, you broke up. Say that again?
Well, before I ask you my question, let me give me your thoughts on the game, and then I'll give you my question because it's more of like a fun fact thing.
Yeah, I missed a word there. Sorry. So, well, I mean, first of all, both these teams can win offensively in both ways. We've seen Todd Gurley probably 1B if you think Mahomes is 1A in the MVP race. And on the other side of it, Drew Brees threw 125 yards last week, and they won a football game. So the over-under is 60. And by the way, these teams could run the ball 70% of the time and still reach that over. That's how good these run games are. To me, if you're the Saints, this is in the Superdome. You need to win this game. Like, I think this is huge for the Saints. Because if you can't beat the Rams in the Superdome, when are you, possibly without Cooper Kupp, when are you going to beat them? You know? So I think this is an absolute monster game for the Saints. And I like them a little bit at home just because I think it's hard to go undefeated.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads right into my question. Do you think, because we've seen the last couple of years, the last team to lose their first game, get their first loss, has not won the Super Bowl? Do you think that the Rams can buck that trend? You know, we hear about it all the time with like the President's Trophy in hockey. We hear about it sometimes about the 1 seeds in college basketball, the NBA. Sometimes with baseball, though that wasn't the case this year with the Red Sox. Do you think the Rams can reverse that curse?
Do I think they're good enough to win the Super Bowl? Yes. Would I put money on them to win? No. Part of it has to do with a defense that I'm not sure is as great on all 3 levels as we thought, in particular with Akeem Talib's injuries. Marcus Peters hasn't been necessarily a elite star that I expected him to be, and that linebacking core worries me. And an offense that I know is multidimensional and has a great running back. To me, Jared Goff hasn't proven himself in a 2-minute drill, if you will. So I don't think they buck the trend, no. I think they're good enough to win the Super Bowl, sure. I think there's some other teams. Right now, would you think the Rams would be favored over the Patriots in the Super Bowl?
No, I don't think so.
Right, and the Patriots, by the way, are looking better and better every week with an offense that's healthy and a young defense that's growing. Not young and old defense that's growing, but you know, you talk about teams like the Steelers. You talk about teams like the Chiefs. Now, I don't think the Chiefs' defense is all there, but there's some other teams here that I think can trip the Rams up. There's some really good football teams. Parity is definitely not dead in the NFL. I mean, the Packers should have beaten the Rams. The Packers should have beaten the Rams in LA. Also, the other thing is, and this is a shame to say, the Rams getting the number 1 seed, they don't have home games. Like that's the other thing you got to think about. They don't have a home field advantage that other teams have because they don't have a strong fan base. They have they're playing in the Coliseum. It's an old stadium. That's a huge factor too. It was basically Green Bay over the weekend. Like I listened to them. You could hear them. You could just hear them. So that's interesting to me. But no, I don't think they buck the trend. I think they lose this weekend, and I don't think they win the Super Bowl. So it's tough for me to say that because I know how talented they are, and I might eat my words later, but it's where I am with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think that they will. I think the Patriots. I think of upstart teams. I think the Chiefs have a better shot of it. Yeah, there's a lot to think about there, especially with how better a lot of teams in the NFC are looking in the past couple of weeks. The Panthers being one. The Saints are still looking pretty solid. I don't know. I mean, the Redskins, if they really get the ball rolling and end up pulling this thing out, and we're really going to do it with them, you know, who knows? I mean, I'd love to think the Bears, but who knows? They're playing the Bills this week, who, because Derek Anderson is hurt, they'll be starting Nathan Peterman, Matt.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I gotta pick up. Yeah, it's too bad. I don't think I can really pick up that defense, pick up that Bears defense. You got to start them in fantasy. Khalil Mack.
That's a definite DraftKings starter.
Poor Nathan Peterman. Like he gets finally put back in the lineup, and the first team he's got to play is the Bears and Khalil Mack. Assuming Mack's back, he missed last week, but yeah, I know I'm with you there. The other really big game, and we thought probably be a little bit more important, but it's going to be really fun to watch the two of them go at it. Is the Packers and the Patriots, Rodgers versus Brady. It's a great matchup.
Possibly the greatest commercial ever last week. Did you see it?
No, which one are we talking about?
The Michael Jordan, let's settle it on the field.
Oh, yeah. Like that.
Incredible. If you haven't seen this, Michael Jordan talks about, there's a lot of talk about who's the GOAT. this, that, the other thing. They wear the same number. And then they finally start showing highlights, and it's Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And he goes, I want to see it. Let's settle it on the field. I'll watch that. It's incredible.
And by the way, because of Sony Michel's injury, this looks to be more and more like a game where there's going to be a ton of passing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I made the mistake of picking up and starting Kenyon Barner, thinking like, oh, yeah, like he'll split time with James White. It'll be great. Nope. Didn't work out.
Yeah.
So you might want to fade me on my fantasy picks, America, and greater world. I think we get some listeners randomly in other countries. Hello.
Great weekend.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's a big passing game. Over under set at 57 of this game. I think though Green Bay's defense is something we haven't seen a ton of throughout this season, especially once you trade away Clinton Dix. I think that really opens up the field for Edelman, for Josh Gordon, for Gronk, who I mean, think about this. What other teams have been able to do to Gronk is rough him up and not let him go over the field. Who's stopping Gronk from going over the field on the Packers defense?
I don't know, because they're going to need Clay Matthews to be there to do some other damage. So I'm with you. That's going to be tough.
Go in on Tom Brady. They're not going to have him like bumping Gronk and making him they're not going to make the New England defense or the New England offense afraid to send Gronk over the middle. I just New England's 6-point favorite, and I think that's a little low.
I think that's out of respect. I think that's respect to Aaron Rodgers. Really.
Yeah, that's respect to Aaron Rodgers. That's true. At Gillette, yeah, all right. No, it's true. It's respect to him. But
I mean, now we're gonna wait. The lines are gonna shift. Players get injured. We'll get picks out a little later this week. We just wanted to make sure we played. It's a little earlier in the week for the pod, but we wanted to make sure with the college football rankings came out, we talked about it. It's just going to be a big time.
Like we said earlier, hot off the presses. We wanted to get it. All set to go.
Yep, absolutely. Looking forward to it, my friend.
I am as well. Matt and I, if you couldn't tell from him saying that we will not be watching the college football, it's because we will be on the golf course all day. Thunder Cup 2. Make sure you follow along on Instagram. This year, my phone will actually be able to record audio. Last year, we went live, and while I believe it was Ryan White and I were commentating while you were teeing off, Matt, no one could hear us.
Oh, that's not good.
We now have the ability for you to hear us. So make sure you follow along live. Maybe we'll get some out of Matty D's phone, maybe some out of Greg's phone, since he now has the credentials. Shout out to Greg and his awesome job at the World Series. He and I are talking about doing a baseball recap of the year, kind of year-end wrap-up. As we head into the offseason, I'm going to try to blog a couple things, especially, as you mentioned, with the Phillies being the favorites for one Manfred Machado and Bryson, I don't know his middle name, Harper. I almost said Bryson D. Harper, but that's Bryson DeChambeau, I was about to say. But Matt, thank you as always. It was a ton of fun.
No, great time. I love big weekends. I love the rankings. It's fun to talk about, but obviously we're going to learn all about it on the field. So, you know what? At the end of the day, doesn't matter where you ended up. Just got to win.
Exactly. All right, that's going to do it for us. Follow us on Twitter, ThunderBLG, Matt Stefano21 for him, Jordo9 for me. For the Funvee Tailgate and my man, Matty D, I am Jordy Cannell, the G-Man. Have a good weekend, everybody, and go Birds!